Hi everybody, Creative Katie, Karen Burchill here. Welcome to my channel. Today I'm using the brand new TCW Stencil Butters and I'm sharing all the things I learned. Just a heads up, there are lots of tips shared in the video, not only about stencil butters, but setting up the composition, color selection, so be sure to give this one a listen. So when you start with a new product, you need to play with it. You need to use it, but we've spent money. We don't want to waste it. So I'm going to share everything that I've learned. So there are my stencil butters. And step one, hint one, start small. I'm going to be using these 4x4 magnetic canvases. Now, to start off, I'm going to give half of them a coat of black gesso. This is TCW black gesso, and half are going to get a coat of white gesso. Now, here's a tip. When I'm getting out the gesso, I know I'm going to be making a mess. I know there's going to be cleanup. So typically I do more than what I would be doing in one sitting. So I black gesso 4 or 5 of these. Now, these magnets I typically create and sell in craft fairs. So I do a bit of assembly line. Now, if you're new, I don't recommend that you create all of them. That can get a little confusing and overwhelming, but you can definitely do step one, which is get that gesso on there. You clean up once, and then it's at the ready when you are ready to create. There's been a lot of chatter in the Facebook group about, how do you find the time? Well, this is one of the ways that you find the time. You do this in one 15, 20-minute setting, and then it's ready for you. I said there's going to be a lot of tips, and I recap all of those at the end of the video, just to have them all in one place. So here I'm just putting a coat of white gesso on and setting it aside to dry. And again, the advantage, one cleanup, not a cleanup every single time with the gesso. Now here's the first one. I'm using the kaleidoscope stencil and 2 butters. Now, this is a magnet that I had that I created the old-fashioned way. I put modeling paste on it, then after that dried, I put paint on it, and after that dry, I rubbed gold. And I had the idea that maybe the stencil butters are going to shorten that process, saving me time. And when you're doing things for a craft fair, you don't necessarily want to spend a lot of time because you're not selling them for huge amounts of money. So anything that saves time is worthwhile. So I'm taking this kaleidoscope stencil and I am taping it down on the top and bottom because my thought process here is that this is going to um, prevent it from moving, which it did. I'm using orchid and fuchsia stencil butters. Now the stencil butters are softer than modeling paste, and they have this amazing shimmer and they blend really well. So I'm liking the idea of blending it right when I apply it. So for this one, I'm using my favorite palette knife that I typically put modeling paste on with. And we'll see what happens here. So I'm putting this on at different points and places. You can see that my taping it down is preventing it from moving. I'm just putting it in different places. Throughout this video, you're going to see me applying it in different ways, and I will give you my thought process on what works better. So then I'm getting the orchid and the blue, the turquoise and that purple where they mix makes another color, which adds variation to whatever you're putting it on. With minimal effort on your part, I might say. So you're getting a lot of bang for your buck. But I would be careful not to blend it too much. The moment of truth. Now here I am going to add a little bit of nice champagne gold modeling paste. And there was no problem with adding the modeling paste, although I think I would just rub gold on some of the high points if that's what I want to do at the end. But it did work, and that's why I've left this part in. So now the moment of truth, I lift up the stencil and it had seeped under the stencil in several places, and it's just messier than I would like for this application. So I cleaned off the stencil, or cleaned off the canvas, repainted, redid the gesso, and now I'm applying it with this key card. So I put some of the stencil butter on my glass table and then put it on the card. First I did the turquoise, then I'm adding the orchid, blending a little bit. And the moment of truth. And it is absolutely perfect. So I'm thinking the key card is the way to go. And I've had a lot of success using key cards with modeling pastes and now the Stencil Butters. Now there's lots of stuff left on the stencil and I don't like wasting. So I'm just taking the palette knife and the key card and I'm just rubbing it onto tissue paper. Now the white part of the tissue paper will go translucent when I glue that on. So these are collage papers that I can use on art journal pages. And it works perfectly. So don't waste your stuff. Clean that stencil. So here's number 2. And this time I'm using fuchsia and marigold. And I'm using the key card. Okay, was that a one-hit wonder? Or does the key card really work better? So I put it in different places. Put it on. And another perfect application. So I'm thinking that key card is really key. Now I'm scraping off the sides with the excess, but you don't have to do that, and I'll talk about that later on. I'm removing the excess onto the tissue paper. Whatever you get can be used as an element on the next page. So here's the next one. This is linked tiles and chartreuse and turquoise. Different color combinations. Do you have to blend the colors? Absolutely not. You can go one color, but I like that variation in on the tile. And it's doing the mixing for me. And quite honestly, on here, I'm not going to do anything else after I've applied the color and texture with the Stencil Butters. So if I get some blending, so here I go a little bit more too much with the blending. And you can see I'm just applying it right to the key card. So I'm not even putting it on the table. And here's my suggestion, put a little bit more. Get your tissue paper out so that you can use the excess. But if you have more, it tends to cover better. Loving the look of that one. Love the contrast with the black underneath. And there I've put it on, right? I've got something. I could take that square and put it onto another tile and it would be perfect. This is the Garden Gate stencil, and this time I'm using 3 of the colors. Gamboge, marigold, and they'll be listed in the description box below. The stencils as well as the Stencil Butters. And those can all be purchased at NinnysNapkins.com, and there's a link in the description box, as well as through the TCW Shopify store. So shop where you get the best deal. Putting that on. Here I got a little too blendy and I lost some of my yellow. So cautionary tale. I'm scraping off the excess, but I would just leave that and set it aside. Now the stencil butters take a fair bit of time to dry. I left them overnight. Don't need that they needed that. It just kind of was an end to my day. But you've got to give them the time to dry and wash those stencils with your Murphy's oil soap. Here I'm using this vine stencil, and I don't end up using the gamboge, the yellow. I believe this is terre verte and the lime green. I mix them on the stencil. Now here's where I learned this stencil inadvertently was put upside down. What? There's a right side to a stencil? And yes, there is. On each stencil, there is etching where the number is and the words, the Crafter's Workshop, or I believe other companies as well. The etching should be up. And sometimes that will make a difference. And I'll show that at the end of the video, what I mean about the etching. Here I'm just kind of running it against the stencil. And you see at the top, I did get some seepage, but I show you how to work with that when we compose the actual tiles. Moving back to fuchsia and marigold and this Art Deco stencil. This time I've mixed them, put them both on my card at the same time. And I loved how this one worked. I also wasn't too stingy with the stencil butters because I know I'm going to put them on that tissue paper, which is going into my stash, which I can use as a collage element on future pages. Love this. I love that color combo so much. I love that stencil that I did it with the fuchsia and the orchid. I was going to put the third color and then I decided, you know what? I didn't need it. If you're not sure if the two colors are going to mix well, take a little bit on the side on a piece of white paper, mix them up and see what you get. If you like it, do it. If you don't, avoid it. There are colors there that aren't going to make something pleasant. So here are the beautiful tiles after they're dried. And you can see this shimmer here. OMG, they are spectacular. And I love them. Now here, remember where I scraped the sides to get rid of the excess? You can just take your finger at this point and break it off or slide that through without making a mess. And that's what I would have done. I'm also going to finish the edges later, but I don't want the excess. But you can see, oh my gosh, you can see that shimmer. Love this one. So all in all, the Stencil Butters cut my work in making these magnets. Love this stencil so much and the application. Would have liked to have done one on the black background. Oh, next time. And there's the original and there's the other one. If I wanted that gold on there, I can just take my finger and lightly buff it with a Ranger tool. Now the stencil butter did get on the back, on the magnet part, and here's what I recommend. Just grab a baby wipe and rub it off. Don't scrape it. You don't want to gouge your magnet if you have a magnet there. So I played around in my stash, and I have the Julie Nutting dolls cut, I've got their clothes cut, and I've got some of these crazy birds also cut out in my stash, as well as sentiments. So I spent some time playing with the orientation. Now here's how I decided what color goes with what color. So I grabbed my color wheel. So I'm in the purple pink over here. So I can go two ways. I can stick in that same color zone, or like this one, I can go across the color wheel, complementary color scheme, and get something that's really going to pop. So this Julie nutting, we're over here. I kept the dress in that same color zone, analogous colors. Now this one, I have some variation here. I don't just have these dresses cut out. And you can see, you can go with, here's across the color scheme. Blue is across from the orange. This one's blue, but this one isn't as solid. And with the background, it doesn't go as well as that solid blue purple. That one, you get a lot of pop there. And with that white in the background, I felt that that solid and a better contrast worked better than this one. But all of them work, and it's just a personal, individual choice. Now, when it comes to the crazy birds, I planned on coloring them in some way. So again, if the colors are over here, if I want, I can use a complementary color scheme, go teal. I could go yellow, or I could just, analogous colors, colors that are already in there. Now with the black background, I could also leave these birds white, black and white. I could just paint the beak out or the feet out and just leave it black. And that's another option. Now, because there's so much texture on here, I don't want to outline my words. So I'm using the Ranger blending foam with black acrylic paint, and I'm just edging all the sentiments. And you can see on the white one, it's really necessary to have that. And I'm also edging the Julie nutting dolls, the focal images, once they're already painted and everything's glued down. It's a little step, but it's necessary. It just adds that finished quality. But I'm not going to make you watch me do all of that. So these are the Julie nutting dolls. I have them painted. I have their hair painted. So all I have to do is once I select the right dress for my background, I'm just going to glue this down with TCW matte gel medium. See, I've left the dresses longer. I can cut it off if what I'm using it on requires that. So we're going to colorize some of the birds. So I'm going to use that lime chartreuse color because I lost a lot of it because I blended it too much, but that's okay because now I can use it and it works with my background. Here I'm using my paint. I'm getting a little bit of yellow in there as well, just for variation. I don't like ever just using one color. And then I'm going to shade later with a darker green and black. And that's going to make that bird pop out. This one I'm going more yellow, and I have that yellow out. I just want him to pop. Again, I lost that yellow, so that's okay. I know that yellow is going to work on here. And I know that I'm going to shade. So this one, I could go teal. There's an analogous color scheme. Could go purplish, more fuchsia. So I do mix the orange and my fuchsia, my quinacridone magenta in there, and I get something that works. And again, I know I'm going to shade this. So if you were doing a stash builder, you could gesso all the magnets ahead of time, or canvases ahead of time. You can, stamp all the images and have them cut out so they're at the ready. And here I'm shading with some of the colors that are in the background. I'm adding a little bit of that green because that's in the background. And when I'm doing more than once, I'm just kind of doing this assembly line. But as I suggested, if you're a beginner, you may not want to do more than a couple at a time. It can get overwhelming and confusing. I'm using the floating acrylic technique to shade. And, you know, a lot of these stamps, they have places that show you where you should shade. So here I made a bit of a mistake, and you're going to learn from my mistake. I'm using my matte gel medium to glue this down, which is what I typically use, and it's always matte finish. But the Stencil Butters are this pearlescent metallic, and they will dull anything that's shiny. That's their purpose, that's matte. So I lost some of my shimmer on these two magnets in using matte. So I learned that this is a time that you want to use a gloss gel medium. And TCW makes a gloss gel medium, as do other companies. But this is where you don't, one of the features of this is that super pearlescent shimmer that it gives. You don't want to lose it. So there I'm showing you that I've lost it. And here I'm not, there's the gloss medium. So lesson learned. If you're gluing on top of, when you use Stencil Butters, while the matte medium is going to do the trick, you don't want to lose that shimmer. So here's the application. And I'm playing with the fonts here. They're big, they're bold. With the background, I like how this font matches the background. And I'm using gel medium instead of fluid medium here because I do have texture across the whole background. And it's a little tougher to get it to stick down. So the gel medium is necessary. Now I'm using the Ranger tool, blending tool with black acrylic paint, and I'm edging it. That cleans up the edges, even on the black, and it frames your mini art. And I did that on the white ones and the black as well. I find that the blending tool, the foams, work better than the makeup sponges, but you can use a makeup sponge if that's all you have. I just find this easier. So to recap the composition, this is link tiles with chartreuse and turquoise stencil butter. Garden gate stencil with gamboge, marigold, and crimson stencil butters. Jungle vines, lime green and terre verte stencil butter. Art Deco leaves, stencil butters, fuchsia and marigold. Great color combo. And then I used the Art Deco leaves again because I loved it so much with fuchsia and orchid stencil butters. This is Fantangle stencil with fuchsia and marigold. And Kaleidoscope stencil with turquoise and orchid. So this is a 4x4 magnetic canvas. You can buy plain canvases 4x4 and put the magnet on, or you could use cardboard coasters and do the same. And I'll put a link to those as well. Recommended, use a key card, not a palette knife in applying them. I found the most success there, so if you're having trouble, try it my way. Hopefully you'll have as much success as I did. Now, with the stencils, right side up, this is the etched part. And if you rub your finger over it, you can feel it. I put a little bit of paint in the etching, so then I can always find which side is up. Again, if you're having trouble, try this. It just might be the solution for stenciling and for putting pastes and butters through. When gluing down on the stencil butters, use gloss gel medium. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you give this a try. Check out all the affiliate links in the description box. Happy creating!